In the cold, quiet town of Nizhny Novgorod, Russia, Anatoly Moskvin was a respected historian and linguist, admired for his expertise in ancient cultures and burial practices. However, his fascination with cemeteries hid a sinister secret. For over a decade, Moskvin exhumed the bodies of deceased young girls under the cover of night, transforming their remains into eerie dolls. He dressed them in colorful clothes, crafted wax masks to hide their decayed faces, and stuffed their bodies with fabric to maintain their shape. These dolls were seated in his apartment, on couches, beds, and even inside closets, seemingly part of his everyday life. Moskvin went beyond simple preservation. He celebrated the dolls' birthdays, named them, and spoke to them as if they were alive. He claimed he was giving them a second chance at life, insisting he couldn't bear to see them left in the cold earth. He also composed music and stories, imagining they would enjoy them. In 2011, his horrific secret came to light when police investigated his home after complaints from his parents. Inside, they found 29 mummified bodies. Their wax-covered faces gave them a doll-like appearance, but the reality was far more grotesque. During his trial, Moskvin stated he never intended harm. He expressed a twisted compassion for the girls he exhumed, saying he felt he was rescuing them. Declared mentally unfit, he was committed to a psychiatric hospital, where he remains to this day. Moskvin's story is a chilling reminder of how obsession can drive even the brightest minds to unspeakable acts. What could push someone to such extremes? The full answer may remain forever buried in the depths of his disturbed psyche. In the peaceful suburb of Westfield, New Jersey, a family thought they had found their dream home. A stately colonial mansion built in 1905, with a manicured garden and a history as charming as its exterior. However, their idyllic life began unraveling just days after moving in. A letter arrived, addressed to the new homeowners, signed ominously by the Watcher. It began politely, welcoming them to the house, but the tone quickly darkened. "I have been watching 657 Boulevard for decades now. My grandfather watched it in the 1920s, and my father watched it in the 1960s. It is now my time," it read. The Watcher hinted at hidden secrets within the house, asking, "Have you discovered what lies within its walls?" More letters followed, each one more unsettling than the last. The writer appeared fixated on the family's young children, referring to them as young blood, and claiming an intent to protect the house's legacy. The Watcher seemed to know intimate details about the family's lives, where they ate, where the children played, and even the layout of the home. The family was gripped by paranoia, installing security cameras and fortifying their doors. Yet the letters persisted, with chilling taunts. What does it feel like to be watched? What does it feel like to live in fear? Unable to bear the stress, the family abandoned the house after just a few months and filed a lawsuit against the previous owners, alleging they had concealed knowledge of similar harassment. The story became a media sensation, sparking wild speculation about the Watcher's identity. Was it an envious neighbor, a disgruntled former resident, or something more sinister? Despite investigations, the sender of the letters was never identified. The house remained empty for years, its eerie reputation growing. Eventually it was demolished and the land was divided into 2 lots. Yet the legend of the Watcher endures, haunting those who hear it. To this day, no one knows who the Watcher was or why they were so obsessed with 657 Boulevard. The unanswered questions leave behind a lingering unease, as if the Watcher's gaze might have shifted to a new target. In a small foggy town known for its grim legends, an old house stood across from the local cemetery. Its broken windows and tangled garden hinted at years of neglect. But whispers told of a reclusive man who lived there with his elderly mother. The house, often called the cemetery house, inspired tales of hauntings and mysterious figures seen in its dark windows. One chilly autumn night, two teenage friends decided to investigate. Armed with flashlights and recording equipment, they approached the house, its rusty gate creaking open like a warning. The door was ajar, inviting them into the decaying structure. Inside, the air was cold and stale, carrying the faint scent of mold and something indescribably foul. Graffiti covered the peeling walls, and the wooden floors groaned under their cautious steps. As they moved through the rooms, strange sounds seemed to follow them. Soft footsteps, faint murmurs, and the metallic scrape of something heavy being dragged. Their nerves frayed, but curiosity pushed them forward. What they didn't know was that Alan S. Davis, an ex-convict, was watching. Alan, a man hardened by life's misfortunes, had turned the house into a fortress for his ailing mother. Years of intrusions had made him wary of anyone daring to trespass. That night, hearing noises from the lower floor, Alan grabbed his rifle, his mind racing with fear and anger. Downstairs, the girls realized they weren't alone. A figure emerged from the shadows, and before they could explain or escape, Alan's paranoia overtook him. The thunder of a gunshot echoed through the house, followed by a piercing scream. The neighbors, used to the eerie quiet of the cemetery, called the police after hearing the commotion. When officers arrived, they found one girl fatally shot and the other gravely injured. Alan was arrested, sobbing as he explained that he believed he was defending his home and his mother. The tragedy left a permanent scar on the town. The once feared cemetery house became a symbol of human fragility rather than supernatural terror. Today, no one dares approach the property, not because of ghosts, but because of the haunting echoes of that fateful night. The house now stands empty, its windows dark, a silent monument to the deadly consequences of fear and misunderstanding. In the 16th century, in the ancient town of Valladolid, Spain, a renowned doctor with a reputation for practicing black magic created what seemed like an ordinary armchair. However, this chair was far from ordinary. The doctor, who delved into the occult, believed the chair was a conduit for his dark powers, used during his sinister rituals. According to local legend, the chair was imbued with dark forces that would awaken when anyone sat in it. Those unfortunate enough to do so began to die mysteriously. Within days of sitting in it, their lives ended under unknown and often horrific circumstances. The exact nature of these deaths remains a mystery, but the pattern was undeniable. The doctor was eventually arrested and put on trial by the Spanish Inquisition. During his trial, he confessed to using the chair for his rituals and insisted that it was cursed by powers beyond human comprehension. Before his execution, he warned that anyone who sat in the chair would meet a violent, untimely end, as the chair had become a vessel for malevolent forces that no mortal could hope to control. Once the doctor died, the chair was left abandoned for years. But as time passed, the chair's evil reputation never faded. In the 19th century, the chair was rediscovered by workers from the University of Valladolid. Curious and unaware of its terrible history, a janitor sat in the chair during a break. 3 days later, he was found dead under bizarre circumstances. Soon after, another person sat in the chair, only to die in a similarly unexplained manner. Word spread quickly, and it wasn't long before the authorities took drastic action. To prevent further tragedies, the local authorities decided to hang the chair in the university chapel, far out of reach from any curious visitors. It was said to be chained and placed in a high spot on the wall, symbolizing both its danger and its connection to dark forces. Despite the authorities' efforts to keep it contained, the chair became the subject of numerous rumors. It was whispered that its dark power could still affect those who dared to even look at it. When the chair was eventually transferred to the Archaeological Museum, it gained a more macabre reputation. The museum guards became wary of the object, and it was placed in a display case to prevent anyone from coming into direct contact with it. Today, visitors are strongly warned to ask permission before taking a photograph of the chair. Many claim that failing to do so results in strange, often tragic occurrences, accidents, illnesses, or even unexpected deaths. Letters continue to pour in from visitors who ignored the rules, each writing in desperation to apologize and beg for forgiveness from the chair, fearful of the curse they may have unleashed. Some skeptics dismiss the legend of the Devil's Armchair as a mere superstition, born from the mystique of an ancient object with a terrifying history. But for others, the chair remains a dangerous relic, a potent reminder of human folly and the power of forces that are better left undisturbed. Museum staff report that those who are sensitive to energy often claim to feel a thick, oppressive atmosphere surrounding the chair. The chair's malevolent aura seems to persist, casting a chilling shadow over the museum. Despite the passing centuries, the legend of the Devil's Armchair endures as a terrifying testament to the consequences of meddling with the unknown. Robert, the infamous haunted doll, is one of America's most unsettling paranormal artifacts, rooted in the eerie traditions of Key West, Florida. Crafted in the early 20th century by the Steiff Company, Robert was gifted in 1904 to a young boy named Robert Eugene Otto, or Gene, from a wealthy family. According to legend, the doll was given by a vengeful servant practicing voodoo, furious over mistreatment. Standing nearly 3 feet tall, Robert is stuffed with straw and wears a sailor's outfit resembling his original owner's clothing. His fabric face and dark, hollow eyes exude an unsettling presence, with many claiming his gaze seems to follow them. From the beginning, Gene developed an unnerving attachment to the doll, treating it as a living companion. His parents often overheard him speaking to Robert, and what disturbed them most were the low responses they swore were not Gene's voice. Soon, bizarre occurrences began. Shattered objects, overturned furniture, and eerie giggles filled the home. Gene blamed it all on Robert, saying the doll was alive and responsible for the chaos. As Gene grew, his obsession with Robert endured. Even as an adult, he kept the doll seated prominently in a chair by a window, treating it as though it were a cherished family member. Visitors often reported inexplicable sensations. Robert seemed to shift position when not watched directly, and phantom footsteps echoed through empty rooms. After Gene's death in 1974, the new owners of his house inherited Robert, and with him, the sinister happenings. Terrified by the laughter, moving objects, and the doll's unnerving presence, the family ultimately donated Robert to the Fort East Martello Museum, where he remains today. Visitors to the museum are warned to ask Robert's permission before taking photos. Those who fail to follow this ritual often report misfortunes, ranging from accidents to family conflicts. The museum regularly receives letters begging for Robert's forgiveness from those who ignored the rules. Robert remains a popular, if chilling, tourist attraction. His story, steeped in mystery and fear, has inspired films, books, and countless debates about the boundaries of the supernatural. Whether one believes in curses or not, the legend of Robert the Doll is a haunting reminder of the unknown.